I gonna continue my before class meeting because Ma'am Ban requested to me to cite more examples of formal and dynamic or functional equivalence. So first examples is informal equivalence, which is the legal context settings. So, for example, sa surtext in Filipino, ang batas ay pantay para sa lahat ng mamayan. Walang sinuman ang dapat walang mahala ang karapatan ng iba. Ang kontrata ay may bisa sa parehong partido at dapat igalang ang bawat isa. Lahat ng mamamayan ay may karapatan sa malayang pagpapahayag at ang sinumang lumabas sa batas ay mananagot ayon sa umiiral na regular. If you can see the examples, if you are going to translate it into Blow's translation with footnotes is, if you can see, diba, ang mag-translate niya is word for word.
Yes.
Sa usa ka phrases para po ang usa ka readers, it's explain the meaning of the phrases para po sa usa ka readers ma-understand niya what is the original language of that. Next, we have another examples in academic context or settings. Please. As the source text in Latin philosophy is Codigo ergo sum. If you are going to translate in formal equivalence translation, I think, therefore, and I am. So the close footnote here is cogito, which means I think, and then ergo, which means therefore, and sum, which means I am. So this close footnote with close translation with footnote is to explain the meaning of the each words to help the readers to understand what language it is. Next, we have the functional or dynamic functional equivalence. For examples, the source text in English greet one another with a holy kiss. If you are going to translate in dynamic functional translation, in Filipino, magbatian kayo ng may paggalang or pagkamayan kayo bilang pagpati. Instead of translating bitaw of word for word, ang kaning dynamic functional equivalence is it's translate bitaw to adjust the expression para ma-fit ana ka culture or target audience. Then the goal of this dynamic functional equivalence is to produce the effect of the responses of the readers. Nagets ra?
Yes.
So that's all.
Mana day? RB, tabang sa ko RB. Pa-center.
Color equivalence relation. Where color develop the concept of equivalence in translation, how meaning is maintained between the source text or ST and the target text or TT. It distinguishes correspondence from equivalence. It shows the similarities and differences in vocabulary, grammar, or structure. It helps translators understand how words normally match between languages, but it does not always consider in the context. Like for example, in Spanish word embarazada, if ato siyang kanang ikon sa similarity sa English word is embarrassed. However, their meanings are different. The correct translation of embarazada, if gamito nato siya in sentences in Spanish, is estoy embarazada. The correct English meaning is I am pregnant. Equivalence refers to the correct translation of meaning in a specific context. Instead of translating word for word, the translator chooses words that express the same idea in the target language. Like for example, in English expression, it's raining cats and dogs, meaning it is raining very heavily. If translated literally into another language, it may sound strange or confusing. So the translator uses uses equivalent expression sound. It's raining very hard. It's raining very hard. The translator focuses on conveying the meaning, not the exact words. Kaya instead, ato siyang i-translate into ani nga panlain kayo paminahon. Colors, 5 types of equivalence. The first one is denotative equivalence. Focuses on a literal or dictionary meaning of words in a source text and target text. Like for example, el gato está en la mesa. In English translation, the cat is on the table. Second one, connotative equivalence. This refers to the emotional or stylistic meaning of words. The translator chooses words that give the same feeling or tone. Like for in the source text, he passed away. In the translation, he died. Pass away sounds more polite or softer, while died is more direct. The translator must choose the word that fits the same tone in a target language. Number 3, the text normative equivalence. This type focuses on the style and structure expected in different types of text, such as news articles, academic writing, and advertisement. Like in a given example news headline, typhoon hits the Philippines. Another language translation will also follow the headline style, which is usually short and direct. The fourth one is pragmatic equivalence. Focuses on the effect of the message on a reader or audience. In example, English side, keep off the grass. Possible translation is do not step on the grass. The words may change slightly, but the message and purpose remain the same for the reader. And the last one is formal equivalence. Focuses on the form style, wordplay, and aesthetic feature of the text. Example in poetry, English rhyme, twinkle twinkle little star. The translator tries to keep the rhyme or the rhythm in the target language. Scholar explains that translators must decide which type of equivalence is most important depending on the text and the audience. Sometimes meaning, style, or reader understanding is prioritized. In a simple term, Scholar's theory shows that translation is not just changing words from one language to another. It involves balancing meaning, style, text type, reader's needs, and form. That's all.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Now I'll be discussing the last topic of chapter 3. We have the topic latter or later developments in equivalence. Kindly read.
Equivalence does not consider as a essential concept of creative language. Scholars such as Susan Rushnet and Mona Baker discuss how translators attempt to find equivalent meanings between the source language and the target language.
Yes. However, many researchers argue that equivalence is not always exact because translation is influenced by language, culture, and context. Now, according to Anthony Pym, there are two main types of equivalence, namely natural equivalence and directional equivalence. Please read the first one.
Expressions that naturally correspond between two languages.
So I think that it's self-explanatory. These equivalents are commonly found in dictionaries, glossaries, and terminology databases. For example, the source text is from the language Spanish. So let's have the word casa, which means house. In the targeted text, we have English. Our targeted text is in language English? So in English, it is house. So same with if your source text is Bisaya, balay. So in English, sa imong targeted language, which is English, its translation is house like that boy. That's how natural equivalents work. Another example, what do we call the language in Germany? The word given here is, in English, it's university. In German, if it's translated, it is Universität. Yes. These translations are straightforward. Straightforward ang ang natural equivalence. Because the terms have commonly accepted equivalence. The next one is directional equivalence. Kindly read. Yes. It focuses on the meaning. If natural equivalence is nag-focus siya sa words, sa directional equivalence, nag-focus siya sa meaning. For example there, Chinese proverb din na siya, or Chinese, nag-use din na siya o Chinese nga symbols. Then you translate na siya literally sa English. The example given there is, kill the chicken to warn the monkey. And if it's translated to the targeted text, using directional equivalence, it will turn to punish one to warn the others. Nagets na? If ang natural equivalence is nag-focus sa words, ang directional equivalence nag-focus sa meaning. In this case, the translator prioritizes the meaning rather than the literal wording, as I said earlier. In descriptive translation studies, translators sometimes use a concept called, please take note everybody, tertium comparison. Comparations, which means a shared point of comparison between the source text, as you can see in the example, and the targeted text. This helps determine whether the translation conveys the same core meaning. So as you can see in the example, the translation there is from that is a Hausa proverb, and that is the source text. A bit with fire, the medicine for a mad horse. Muna siyang literal na translation. Then the targeted translation is desperate situations require desperate measures. And other translators try to merge it to see what the result is. So the result there is a very strong bit is needed to control a difficult horse, or strong action is needed to control a difficult person. So as you can see, mura siya na-enhance, di ba? The shared meaning is that strong, Now next is the criticism of equivalence. Some scholars criticize the concept of equivalence because it can be circular. For example, equivalence is often used to define translation, while translation is also used to explain equivalence. According to Gideon Turry, instead of strictly defining equivalence, it is better to study the relationship between the source text and the translated text. So, mo to siya ang critique sa equivalence. Conclusion: although equivalence has been criticized, it remains an important concept in translation studies. Translators must consider linguistic, cultural, and contextual factors when finding equivalence. In practice, equivalence is still widely used in translator training and evaluation, even though modern translation theories emphasize flexibility and descriptive analysis. Next. Next, we have here a case study. Case study on NIDA's formal and dynamic equivalence. Lupit sa mga si NIDA. Sabi pa nga na niya. It is Eugene NIDA. This case study examines 3 English translations. As you can see, we have King James Version, originally published in 1611. The next one, we have New English Bible, or NEB, originally published in 1970, and New American Bible, originally published in 1970. These concepts help explain how translators choose between staying close to the original wording or focusing on the meaning and effect on readers. So we have here the formal and dynamic equivalence. The first one is formal equivalence. It focuses on maintaining the form and structure of source text as close as possible. So example there. Sa kaniyang mga versions, di ka na siya sa Hebrew na book, sa original, di ba? And the translation, the first translation there is from King James Version. So mo dyan siya ang dool ng translation din sa book of Genesis. Next is the dynamic equivalence. Focuses on producing the same meaning or response for the target audience. The case study compares three translations from King James Version, New English Bible, and New American Bible. These translations show different approaches to equivalence. And now let's move forward to the analysis of translation. By the way, ang focus sa formal equivalence is on maintaining the form and structure as close as possible sa original text. Kunya, ang dynamic equivalence focuses on producing the same meaning gihapon, pero murag iya bitong magkuha siya og mga words nga mas suitable sa modern nga kanang karon mga tao. Dali lang sabtan ba? Let's use the statement from the King James Version 1.2 chapter 1 verse 2. And the earth was without form and void. As you can see, sa NEB, New English Bible, di ba, ni-stick man ang KJV sa kuan, sa original form. The earth was without form and void. Medyo lisod kayo siya sa ito, no? Sa man ang void. Dagan kaya, kung sa Bisaya pa na, laom siya nga pagka-Bisaya. Then, it was translated into New English Bible. Nahimo na siya, the earth was without shape and empty. So mura siya ganang i-fit siya ba sa bagong cynical nga aron siya masabtan. The next is the New American Bible. Mura na siya i-interpret siya sa original phrase. Mura siya na kanang i-add on ba, more bitaw mas creative siya paminawon. The earth was formless wasteland. So mas lami siya paminawan kaysa sa the earth was without shape and empty.
Pero dili ko sila may wrong paminawan.
Yes.
Formless wasteland.
Yes.
Ano sa wasteland? Wasteland.
Mm.
Kanang may waste, but then first, what's that? Number 2, the earth was without shape and empty. Kanya, ang next na translation is Formless wasteland.
Not, lahi ra siya word, pero same ra gyapon ang thought. Nara gyapon ang thought. The KJV closely follows the structure and wording of the Hebrew original. This translation, as you can see in the example, keeps the traditional and literal phrasing reflecting the form of the source text. However, the language may sound old-fashioned or difficult for modern readers. Diba? Listen siya sa ton. The NEB attempts to make the text clearer and more understandable, while still keeps some original structure like the earth. Nalaghapon siya. Atong mga diligent ma-change ba. The meaning remains the same, but the wording is simpler and more modern, making it easier to understand. The third one, the NAB uses more interpretive translation. What is that? Interpretive translation to convey the meaning of the text. Another example there was the line ikan sa NEB, which is Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the water. Kanya pag-abot na diri sa NAB, nahimo na siya, a mighty wind swept over the waters. Here, the translator interprets the original phrase differently to provide a clearer meaning for readers, showing a stronger use of dynamic equivalence. Nagets ra? Any questions? Not my questions. So, if imo siyang i-relate sa formal of dynamic equivalence, mas nabilong ang KJV sa formal equivalence. Why? Kay ni stick man siya sa original text. Then ang NEB kay more siya on dynamic equivalence. Yes. This case study demonstrates how different translations of the same text can reflect different approaches to equivalence. The King James Version represents formal equivalence, while the New English Bible and New American Bible move toward dynamic equivalence, as I said earlier. These differences show how translators must decide whether to prioritize faithfulness to the original wording or clarity for the target audience. Nagets lang case study sa Nida about sa formal and dynamic equivalence. Nagets ang formal equivalence. Stick siya sa original text, while ang dynamic equivalence produce the same meaning. Produce the same word or the same type of meaning. Next. Next, nanaputay line E. Next, we have the translation in legal documents na sadta. This is from the Maastricht Treaty. Legal documents require, please read that.
Legal documents require very accurate translation because every version must carry the same meaning and legal force.
The same meaning hapon siya. Then, in many cases, translators use formal equivalence, or formal equivalence siya, which means the translation follows the original wording and structure as closely as possible. An example of this can be seen in Treaty of Maastricht, signed on February 7, 1992, which created the European Union. The treaty exists in several languages, and all versions are legally equal. Now we have here a Portuguese Portuguese translation and English translation. So, arita sa mga lines na to ko na first one is in English, high contracting parties. In Portuguese, we have altas partes contratantes. So as you notice, same rin siya no, ang wordings, nara siya changes sa syntax, nara nag-exchange sa word para mo kuan siya o mapagya ko niya ang same meaning. We also have establish, which in Portuguese is instituem. Instituem. Next, among themselves. In Portuguese, N3C. In English, another one in English, a European Union. In Portuguese, Uma União Europeia. These translations show minimal adjustments. Some small grammatical changes are necessary to make the sentence natural in Portuguese, such as using presente, as you can see in the maklaro
Hindi.
presente. Nasa bello presente. Presente tratado instead of the English word this treaty. Adding designada por to express called or hereinafter called. Slight differences in articles and prepositions. Despite these small changes, the translations still follow the principle of choosing the closest natural equivalent, meaning the translation sounds natural while keeping the same meaning. So, why is it important? In legal translation, it is important that every version of the document produces the same interpretation and legal effect. Now, if translations differ in meaning, it could lead to legal confusion, different interpretations, and possible loopholes. So, in conclusion, this example shows that legal translation must maintain very close equivalence between languages. Even small differences in wording can influence interpretation, which is why translators must carefully balance accuracy, natural language use, and legal clarity. Thank you.
Is that all? Naki-question lang.
Ano?
Pangkuhan ibang functions.
No.
So since we're talking about legal documents, kanya, nabitaw ka ba ka ng mga law sa Philippines na ka ng 1987 Constitution?
Yes.
Do you think, I mean, hindi naman kayo siya relevant sa kanang kuan, hindi kayo siya relevant sa atong topic. But do you think it is necessary na i-translate na to atong law into Tagalog para mas dali siya? What do you think?
I believe.
Sige, go.
I think it depends no on the people.
Mm.
If English mangod siya, it would be harder for other Filipinos to understand. Pero if Tagalog pud siya, which is okay because we are Filipinos and that is our language no? It depends yun.
What do you mean it depends?
I mean, it's okay. It's okay to
It's okay.
translate in Tagalog, which is better.
So, sa imong kanang na preferred nga sa imong discussion, sa imong preferred nga type sa kanang translation, if ever i-translate siya,
Formal equivalence.
formal equivalence, which is, masama na siya nga translation from sense to sense or word for word.
More on word for word. But still, there nagya po changes sa structure para mo fit siya sa own language.
Sige, let's give a hand to Thank you.